Well, good morning, everybody. Afternoon, if you're out on the East Coast. Thanks for joining us today. Kyle Gagne, Western Regional Manager for Techni+Contact Canada. And today, we've actually got a great webinar detailing how we're able to enable the new remote workforce and students for 2021. So, as with most webinars, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping here before we get started. So, we will have a Q&A throughout the session through the chat. So, if you have a question during the event, feel free to enter that into the Q&A. We'll answer it either live or our technical panelists, Dave Nicholas and Mark Gilner, will answer them throughout, but we will also take breaks throughout the webinar to address them live. That being said, we are recording this and we will make the recording available to everybody in the coming days. And you know what? Now that's out of the way, we can dive right into today's topic. It's no surprise to anybody, today's call that the pandemic has highlighted a critical need to outfit workspaces and learning environments for a unified communication platform to enable conferencing, both to serve the on-prem workforce as well as remote engagement. And as of these days, almost everybody has a remote device, such as a laptop and a unified communication platform, such as Microsoft Teams, Zoom Rooms, as we're doing right now, WebEx, Google Hangouts, Blue Jeans, basically pick your poison, but this is how everybody is trying to collaborate in this new work and learn from home model. So today, how are we going to bring this work and learn from home model back into the brick and mortar buildings? And more importantly, how are we going to ensure that this is successful in a post-COVID world? We're joined today by Sean Robinson and Mark Ulrich from Xilica to cover this important topic and how Xilica is actually paving the way for this new hybrid work and learning environments. We'll get a sneak peek of upcoming new products and solutions, as well as real-world applications of this hybrid model from Sean and Mark. And with that, I'll hand it off to Sean to get us started. How are you doing today, Sean?
I'm doing great, Kyle. Thank you very much. Really appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you for joining. We're looking forward to having a good, productive discussion today. As Kyle mentioned, as we go through this, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat. We'll be happy to answer those as we go through and also at the end. So I will bring up the presentation here.
So Kyle, by the way, we have some people here with us as well. So just to cover a bit about the team from Techni+Contact. So going from the Eastern region, myself, Daniel Beaulieu. So for the one who knows me, I've been over 10 years working with Techni+Contact and AMEX Canada. We also have in the Central region, Eric Olivares, who's our original rep there, working with us in the team. So anyone who has questions also regarding that region, any requests, you can address them to Eric directly. We have also Jean-Pierre Xenopoulos, who's our sales director here in Montreal, based in Montreal, but Jean-Pierre is responsible for entire Canada region, so as well. So feel free, again, like Kyle mentioned, to ask any questions while we are performing that webinar. And hopefully you'll get some quite interesting stuff you'll see. Thank you, Kyle. And all yours now, Sean.
Great, thanks, Daniel. Thanks, and then yes, and Mark is coming to you from the West Coast up in Oregon in the US, and I'm coming to you from bright and sunny Dallas, Texas, so a little bit further south. And so again, thank you for your time today. Looking forward to a great discussion here. So I run the product management department at Xilica, so I oversee our product development, and very excited to talk to you guys about some new products we have coming to market in the near term that are around, supporting some of this hybrid collaboration environments that we're seeing now, and we're going to be seeing a lot of as we go forward. So first and foremost, I'm going to just start off talking a little bit about just the evolving space, whether it's a classroom or a conference room, and all the exciting things that we've seen over this past year So again, we kind of all knew this was coming at some point, right? So as the total installed cost of video conferencing started declining pretty rapidly from the days of the hardware-based codec, with the evolution of things like Microsoft Teams and Zoom, and people are starting to utilize this, especially as organizations are more global in nature, being having the ability to do face-to-face communication, over webcams and things like that's very beneficial. But yeah, we never saw anything like we saw in this past year. There's a lot of people, all of us in the business tend to use web conferencing. We tend to be, pretty familiar with it and use it to keep in touch with people, but people who are not are a lot less familiar with it. But now, after this last year in this pandemic, everybody's extremely familiar with Zoom and Teams and use that pretty much 100% of the time as they're working remotely. So, the change in the workplace, it's going to be really interesting to kind of see how this really plays out. And of course, we've been studying this quite a bit, as I'm sure many of you have too, to see how, the changes occur. I know, the big thing in the corporate environment, for many years has been, the evolution of the huddle space as working behaviors changed into small teams, small and agile teams that were doing a lot of project-based work, using small spaces, rooms of 4 to 6 people versus, the large conference rooms. And because of UC applications in the AV industry, we saw a lot of opportunity in these huddle spaces, with web conferencing soundbars and other solutions for the small space, as again, the cost of bringing in collaboration capability as we move from hardware-based codecs into cloud-based UC dramatically reduce the cost of bringing that functionality into these smaller spaces. So huddle spaces grew like crazy. But what we've seen now, the last thing anybody wants to do, especially as there's still variants and the vaccines are still rolling out, is getting to a small space with 3 or 4 other people, right? And so in the near term, what we expect to see happening is, people, organizations utilizing those medium to large conference rooms a lot more than they were. And maybe they only have 4 to 6 people still in there, but they're able to socially distance and spread themselves out in those larger spaces. So in the near term, we definitely expect to see that. And then once, the pandemic's way behind us, the huddle spaces will, I'm sure, continue to re-engage. But we really see the environment within a corporate organization really changing into more of a collaborative atmosphere. I think a lot of organizations have seen an opportunity here. We all know that facilities managers will do anything they can to reduce the square meters per employee, right? And continuously reduce that real estate cost, especially for large enterprises based in large metropolitan cities, so that's a huge cost to them. So now having the ability where, when you're doing heads down focus work, you can do that just as well at home. Most people can do that just as well at home as they could in the office. And so having that hybrid environment where people have the flexibility to work from home and be able to do some of that focus work at home, but still come into the office to collaborate, I think is going to be a trend that we're going to see even after COVID's long gone. So the enterprise, the company gets benefits because they're reducing probably the amount of space. And the employee gets benefits because they can have, a different type of work-life balance. They can, avoid transit or transportation times and be able to work a few days from home. And a lot of employees will be demanding that for flexibility purposes going forward. So companies will have to react. And so it'll be really interesting to see how the workplace changes as a result. I do still see that these meeting spaces will still be occurring and maybe even growing because people will want to get together and huddle more, and that's probably going to actually take more meeting rooms. More meeting rooms will take up more real estate than actually desks because people will do their desk work more at home. So that's kind of how we see things playing out. So the other thing too to note is that the BYOM, which bring your own meeting, people are talking about a lot, because people have become very, very, very familiar about how to run Teams and Zoom and WebEx and things like that on their laptop. And near term after COVID, they're not going to be wanting to go in and touch a lot of touch panels and things like that, right? Even though the risk is still really low from what we've read about interacting with user interfaces like that. But people are very familiar with their laptop and how their laptops work with these UC applications. And so there's this we see a trend where people are going to want to be, using their laptops in these spaces and bringing those in and plugging those in to run a conferencing session versus, the traditional, using a UC appliance or something like that. So that's going to be another interesting trend we're going to see as we go back into the office. Again, yeah, so we're seeing that larger meeting spaces probably used for some of these socially distanced rooms, and then people will start going back into the smaller spaces because it's typically, teams of 4 to 6 that are doing a lot of the work. On the classroom side, again, wow, I would have really not wanted to be an AV IT technology manager in a university over this last year. They worked a tremendous amount of hours rapidly trying to get everybody on Zoom or Teams, and then as universities started going into the blended environment where they're allowing some students to come into the classroom socially distanced while others were coming remotely simultaneously. The lecture theaters and the large classrooms had, cameras and mics and speakers and things like that. And so that wasn't too big of a deal. But, there was a lot of smaller to medium-sized classrooms that they had to rapidly deploy equipment, peripherals to support some of this conferencing that was going on, and basically throwing in webcams and things like that, USB mics. Now, though, they're looking at, post-COVID and saying, okay, do we really want these places, these smaller, medium-sized classrooms to be flexible as we go forward, what they call the high flex? And they're really looking at that and saying, yeah, they really do. They want to have that flexibility because it was COVID this last year, right? We don't know what it's going to be in the future. I think we've all learned over the last year to 2 years, anything can happen, right? Anything can happen. And so having that flexibility where you can quickly pivot what was considered just a lecture room or a classroom that was just face-to-face, getting AV technology, installed AV technology in there so you could rapidly be able to go online if you needed to, or have that blended. The other thing is universities are always looking to, make sure they're effectively competing, right? So giving students that option, that flexibility to come into the classroom or do it from home. Let's say they're sick. Let's say that, I know you guys don't have this up in Canada as much, but, down here in the States, we have snow days where, it'll snow an inch and we all stop, we freeze, we don't know what to do because nobody can drive in it. And so, our students would basically get a day off from school if it snowed. And so I know it's hard to believe for all of you up there, but unfortunately, they won't get to do that anymore because they'll just, go online. So, but the universities are looking at how do we support this going forward in all these small to medium-sized classrooms, so we can do this. And also it gives the university an additional revenue stream. Let's say they can bring in students who can get as close to an in-class experience as they can by coming in remotely and participating during the class, but doing so when they're not in the same geographic area. And it gives universities another way to get income streams for people who are, in another part of the world. So that's another opportunity there. So we see a lot of opportunity, again, in small to medium-sized classrooms that have not yet been outfitted for the hybrid learning aspect of it. And again, everything pivots around these UC applications. So Teams, Zoom, WebEx, Google Meet, and picks up all the others, right? Everything revolves around these, and it's great technology. It's scaled extremely well over this past year as it took on millions and millions and millions of more people onto the infrastructure. So from a Xilica perspective, as we direct our focus into our corporate and education markets, we're looking at this, and we really let these UC applications are really driving a lot of our product development going forward, right? As far as delivering more hardware-based solutions around these to deliver a great user experience. So what's key here in some of the design pillars that we're using, again, we have an understanding that standardization is absolutely key. Anything you're going to be putting in one room, right? You want to have standardized across your entire campus or enterprise because IT people have to support that. So having that standardization, interoperability is key. We'll talk a little bit about some features we have in our product or coming in our product to help, interaction with teams and things like that, right? So again, enabling those experiences with those UC platforms and putting features in the hardware that can interoperate with them well. And then also, interoperate with other systems and IT management systems. BYOD friendly, we've got some products that are very focused on that aspect of it because we do see BYOM being a significant trend post-COVID. And then being able to reduce as many black boxes as possible, right? So much of this technology can be virtualized. And so these are the things we're actually doing. And we want, and again, IT and they're always looking for ways to virtualize technology and not have to manage the actual hardware in these different spaces. And so that's another trend that we're seeing. And we're definitely focused on that from a development perspective. And then volume capable, something that can be, put in over and over and over, simple to install and simple to manage, right, is absolutely key. So we'll talk about some of those things as we get into the product side of it. And so now we'll get into the product overview. And so for many of you who have been Xilica customers for a while, there'll be some products in here that you've been using for a while, but you're going to go, hey, wait a minute, that looks different. So we've been really focused on some things at Xilica where we, really diving more into the industrial design of our products, whether it's a user interface or if it's something that sits in the rack. But we've also got some new products so even if you've not been with Xilica for a while, you'll see some new products as we're starting to expand, the ability to deliver more of a full solution in corporate education and government markets. So the whole, and you'll start seeing this in another month, Xilica will have a new website coming out, and it's going to be very different, right? And so you'll start seeing a lot more about our brand purpose, our brand intention, and tying into end user applications and how our hardware and software solutions support that. But it's all about driving authentic interaction. That's really our brand purpose as we go forward, is how we help people authentically communicate and collaborate, right? And so that means being able to hear and be heard with clarity, intelligibility, letting people be themselves when they walk into a space, not having to interact with technology. Things just happen, right? Those are some of the things that'll be happening in the future with some of the software we'll be bringing out. So that's all at the basis of what we're trying to accomplish, is really driving that authentic interaction between people and lots of different types of environments. So in the product portfolio today, audio processing, right? So digital signal processors, we've been doing that for several years. For those of you who might not be familiar with Xilica, we've been in business for about 19 years now, and a lot of heritage in high fidelity audio, right? And signal processing specifically. Control is something we're going to be talking about. That is some functionality that's come into our processors over the last year to year and a half. And we see lots of opportunity there, and we're going to be talking about that. Software for configuration. So if you're familiar with Xilica Designer, we're going to show you a few things that we've been working on there. But our goal is always to simplify how our products are configured, installed, and actually used. And then audio interfaces. And we've had some of you who've been Xilica customers for a while might have used our Rio product line for some, basically analog to networked audio interfacing. And this is where we have some new announcements we would like to talk about here right now as we go through some of this. So, all right, we're going to start with the DSP. So again, if you've been a Xilica customer for a while, you're going to see some dramatic shifts here from a design perspective. So under the hood, it's the same good old Celero DSP. We have moved into higher quality manufacturing environments and have done a lot of work on the aesthetics of the product, as you can see. So this is the new look of the FR1. And then you'll see that there's a new look at the QR1. And these actually, we should be getting our first shipment from our manufacturing facility here late this month. And so you'll start seeing these roll out in May. So if you're not familiar with Xilica, it's a modular-based DSP with networked audio capability in it. And we firmly believe people should only pay for what they need, right? That's at the basis of what we want to do. And signal processors, as you guys know, there is so many applications for DSPs, and they could do some wonderful, wonderful things. But the problem is, for whatever your specific need is, you might have a ton of features in that product that you may not ever use for that application. And so we don't want you to have to pay for that if you don't need it. And so That's where the modularity comes in. So if you don't need analog audio, if you're doing everything networked audio, great. You don't need any, we don't charge you for network audio input and outputs, right? Because it's all modular. And if you don't need, you know, any GPIO or anything like that, we're not going to charge you for it, right? So same thing goes for software, or, you know, things like AEC. So, and I'll just use the FR1 as an example. You know, we have AEC in the product, but if you don't need it, you don't buy it. It's a software licensed capability. So if it's something that you're not using it for conferencing and you don't need AEC, no problem. We're not charging for that. So, but that's at the root. That's at the base of what we believe from a signal processing perspective. So the FR1 down here at the bottom is our one rack unit product, and it's used heavily for, you know, large applications, you know, like lecture theaters and things like that. Or if you're sharing processing across several rooms, whether they be huddle spaces or medium conference rooms, and you're doing everything on networked audio, it's got 64 by 64 Dante built in, or you have that as an option, right? You can even add it later if you want to. You can buy a product without your Dante capability, and you can add that card later if you need to do that. It has 16 card slots, so it gives you up to 32 analog channels. It also has a dual NIC. And so the other thing that's really cool in this product is that you have a one control LAN or control port. So you could tie that to your data LAN that you're doing all your control and management on. And then we have segregated off that is the Dante port that you can actually use to manage all of the audio products. So you can kind of segregate all those audio products off of the LAN. So if you're, you know, having a problem getting IP addresses from IT or something like that, you say, hey, I only need one IP address for all the audio products in this room. That IP address is used for the DSP, and then it handles all the Dante stuff behind it. The other piece is the Dante redundancy. So also we have two Dante ports that are redundant. And so if you ever have an issue on one Dante link, then the other one takes over. So on the FR1D, that's the Dante version. Again, AEC is software license. So if you don't need it, you're not paying for it. And the other thing is too, we have 48 kilohertz sampling as you know, standard in the product, but for some high fidelity audio applications where you need some additional sampling rate, we do have 96 kilohertz available. And again, that's software licensed. So you're not paying for that kind of capability if you don't need it. So that's the FR1. And then the QR1 is quite a little powerhouse, right? So it's in a small form factor, but it's still got the same DSP core that the FR1 does, right? So it's a really nice little workhorse, super small micro format form factor. So it's quarter width rack unit wide. And you can see here 43 millimeters high. So, you know, sliding this under a table or mounting it under a table or sliding it behind a display is really easy to do. It's about the same height, if not a little bit shorter than your traditional Intel NUC UC appliance. So if you got one of those behind the display, you can slide this one in. It's PoE, so you can power it over PoE. It's very easy to connect for network and power. And this one utilizes the same cards as the FR1, but 8 of them, right? So you have up to 16 analog IO. It has 4x4 Dante networking built in. And then you also have USB channel, 2-channel IO cards. We'll talk about that in a second. You still have that dual NIC, so you have that control port, that's PoE, and you have a Dante line that you can use to manage all of your Dante product in the room. And the same here, if you don't need AEC, you're not paying for it. If you do, then you can license that in. Here's the, oh yeah, and there's one of the old units, and then I've got one of them. This is a prototype right here, so you can see some of the difference in the way it looks there. And I don't have all the black. These are still some of the older cards. The new ones are all black, but yeah, so there it is. We do have in the new unit, this was not in the previous unit. I'm sure many of you won't be surprised about this, but where people actually stick this product, and sometimes the ventilation might not be adequate, we do have an overheat protection fan. And believe me, we totally understand the sensitivity around fans on any type of product that goes into an environment. This fan will only kick on if it goes over the maximum rated temperature of the product. So actually, it will 20 degrees over that. So 40 C is max temp rate, but it's 60 C. That's when it's going to start damaging. The heat will start damaging electronic components in the product. That is when the fan will kick on, and you barely hear it. Trust me, you barely hear it. But if you mount this like you're supposed to, according to the directions, you know, in a ventilated rack or, you know, under a table or behind a display, you're not gonna have any problems. The fan will never come on. But that's one of the new features of the product, is just if it's a situation where somebody put it into a you know, a pedestal or something like that that's totally enclosed and the heat in there built up, it's going to turn that fan on to protect itself. So it just helps extend reliability. So on the cards, so yeah, we have GPIO cards and relay cards for, you know, connecting to devices such as projector screens, things like that. We have an AES EBU card, and of course, analog input and output, 2 channels, and then the USB 2x2. So it's 2 in, 2 out over USB. A new feature that's coming out on the USB card, because historically it's only done USB audio, but now with all of the things going on with Teams and people wanting to get mute sync and things like that, we actually have some firmware coming out here in a few weeks for this card that's going to enable HID. So it's HID communication over the USB card, not full for keyboard and mouse, but that HID is what Microsoft Teams uses for mute and volume synchronization. So you will have that capability in the USB card coming up, and then the features in Designer for configuring it. And so that way you get the mute sync status, so that when somebody presses mute on their laptop or in their Microsoft Teams application, you can use that to signal out the DSP to turn on, you know, mute LEDs inside of a mic array or in the room somewhere or something like that. So you'll have the ability to do that. Okay, now let's get into some of the new products. So as we start looking at how do we start, you know, bring out some products that help support some of these new hybrid environments and provide our integrators and consultants with some more flexibility around the DSP line. We all know that Aterotech has been acquired, right? And so we definitely want to have the ability to, you know, as a signal processing and audio company, we want to be able to have the capability to provide more of a full solution with, you know, some networked interfaces. So this is the Geo series of product. It is very simple to install. Everything is PoE, right? So single category cable connection for connectivity and power. They're simple to configure, you know, so you go into a Xilica Designer and right click on the device and you can configure the parameters. They're simple to use. And again, we'll show some applications here shortly. And then also too, these have the new Xilica 5-year warranty on them. As we've moved into 5-year warranty over the last year, these all are supported for 5-year warranty. So there's something going to be around for a long time and supported for a long time. So Geo USB, this product is in a surface mount form factor, and again, very low profile. It's a little bit under 25 millimeters. So it will sit very nicely behind a display if you want to pair this up with a UC appliance for bridging a UC appliance into the audio system in the room, or underneath a table. It's thin enough to where you're not going to be bumping knees on it, and it will, you know, allow for BYOM type applications, bridging a laptop into the audio system. It will also have the same HID USB firmware that we're putting into the card, so you're going to have that capability for Microsoft Teams, mute syncing and volume syncing and all that with your PC or OS. You'll have different ways you can enumerate it through configuration. You can enumerate it with speakerphone, and so our speakerphone with AEC, so that triggers the Teams or Zoom to turn off their echo cancellation, or you can have it enumerate as a speakerphone without AEC, and then that will cause Zoom or Teams to actually use their echo cancellation. So you have that capability, in addition to just setting it up for A2DP for media playback. So you'll have those abilities, or doing multiple. You can do it speakerphone profile plus A2DP. So there's lots of ways you can configure this, and it's all done over software. There's no buttons or switches or dip switches or anything you have to mess with. Everything's done over software, so it can be done remotely. And this is coming out in the summer time frame. We're looking right now at July. So as long as components and everything hold up, we should be okay there. But summer should be no issue for shipping that. Next one was Geo Bluetooth. So this is a Bluetooth to Dante interface. That's optimized for conferencing and for education. And so single gain, US Decora or EU UK single gain. The US version comes just as the module without the Decora faceplate. So if you're using the US version, it's standardized to work with any US Decora faceplate. So you can put whatever color you want there. Again, PoE, simple, super simple to put in. Capacitive touch button, so no moving parts. So you have a capacitive touch button to press and pair. And then you can also control it. You can also pair it from a touch panel. You can use a trigger from Designer or through our control to trigger pairing also. It's optimized for conferencing, meaning that you're not going to get any accidental pairing, right? So having auto pairing kind of functionality is great for home, right? When you're walking out of your car on your phone, having your home speakers automatically pair is great, but not so great when you're walking by a conference room talking to, maybe your significant other, right? And your conference room, because you paired previously, accidentally picks you up. So that auto pairing is not in a function or a feature of this product. So it keeps that very safe, but it still allows for one touch pairing, and it still remembers, I think, up to the 8 most frequent users you can pair from your device. It's using the latest Bluetooth chipset on the market today. So you're going to get, Bluetooth class 5.0 or Bluetooth 5.0 class 2, so the extended range. It's going to use HFP 1.7, which is the latest hands-free profile. So you'll have the latest technology in there. So it's going to last, several years. This one is actually running a little bit ahead of USB. So we expect hopefully to be shipping this in June. If not, it will make the July. So, but we're saying summer at this point. So just one little application diagram to kind of show how we see these being used, and this would be in a conference room environment. So, this is a situation where, depending on what budget you have for a space, right? Again, ceiling microarrays are awesome. They're great. They're fantastic. They can be kind of pricey. And sometimes you might get in a situation where the budget just doesn't afford for a ceiling microarray. So if you wanted to use like your traditional, analog mics on a table, it's great to be able, since the Xlr QR1 is so small, just put it right underneath the table, connect it to PoE, and you can wire your mics right in there. Our audio input cards have, phantom 48 volt phantom power, so you can power the mics from there, and you're good to go. And then you can use the Geo USB if you have a kind of a hybrid room that allows for both BYOM and a UC appliance behind the display. You can put your Geo USB behind the display. Again, it sits in there really nicely at 25 millimeters, and then everything's communicating over network back to the QR1. There's the Bluetooth for allowing mobile devices. So you come in, you basically can make the room your speakerphone. So if you have a call that started on your phone, you just Bluetooth pair to the room, and now you've got the room as your speakerphone. So this example is using just a PoE Dante amp for speakers, but you can also run analog out if you wanted to into an amp and do it that way too. And in here, I'm also showing how your data network, you're connecting UC appliance and the Xlr Q1 and your touch interface into your data control network. And of course, the QR1 is handling a separate, audio network, whether your PoE switch is in the room or out of the room. Your QR1 could be running everything over the Dante network over a separate network. So you're not using up any IP addresses for any the audio products if you don't want to.
John?
Yes.
We have a question in the chat here. I think would be good to answer now. Yeah. We are wondering what would be the coverage of the Bluetooth Geo unit. So I guess
great question. So we're right now with Bluetooth class or 5.0 class 2. It's around 100 feet. So what's that in meters? Like 3 meters or 30 meters, if my math's correct, around there.
Yep, 30 meters sounds about right.
Yeah. So yeah, and then that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. The class 2 is to get that additional range. Good question. And for a conference room, that's really overkill. But the other applications, of course, fitness centers, for media playback, education, in a gymnasium, things like that, media playback. Sometimes your iPad or phone might be a far distance away. So that's really, where we pick up those applications too at that longer range. All right. And finally, the last one we have coming out, new product wise, is the Geo Xlr. And this is our new XLR wall plate. So many of you who've been a Xilica customer for a while have been using the Rio plates, and now we're coming out with a new improved version of that. This will be dual gang. Will fit a US dual gang box. It'll also be shipping with a mud ring if you want to install that really easily with the included mud ring. You'll have that. Software configurable, so you'll have the ability, there'll be no dip switches or anything on this one either. It's all PoE, using Neutrik connectors, and you can configure it, mic or line level over software. Same thing for phantom power, and then all your audio gains, all software configurable. So you'll be doing all that from Designer, so you can do that remotely. You can update it in the future without having to go and pull the box out of the wall. So it's got, again, 48-volt phantom power for condenser microphones, and we're using the high fidelity 32-bit A to D and D to A converters. So Xilica has always prided itself on audio fidelity when it comes to analog to digital and digital analog conversion, and that's going to be also included in this product. And this one's coming out in the summer timeframe. Again, trending right now around July, but we'll see how everything works out with the component supply chains where they are right now. One application that we see a lot in corporate education is for your ad hoc stage setups. So when you have common spaces that are not traditionally used for presenting, but occasionally they are, right? You don't want to put temporary portable gear in there that could walk off, but having a Geo Xlr plate in there where you can quickly connect up some mics and speakers, and then powered speakers, and then get going. The other cool thing is, with Solaro, being able to sit somewhere else on the network, if it's a FR1 sitting in a data closet somewhere, and then you can use your iPad with our control app to actually, do your basic mixing and equalization, things like that, instead of a mixing console for those type of applications. So if you want to use a mixing console somewhere off the network, you could do that, but actually, having a UI that's tied into Solaro to be able to do that, it provides for a really nice little impromptu stage setup for those type of environments.
John, another question came in.
Yeah.
So the Geo Xlr, does it come in any other configurations, or just the 2 XLR in and out?
2 XLR in and out at this point. Yeah. So you would use, if you wanted to do any line in, line out, you just buy an XLR conversion cable.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. All right, and then we're going to talk about the control side of things. And so I've been in the control business for a long time prior to my entrance into Xilica. And so, well, first and foremost, if you're going to be using our products with, with an installed control system, whether it be Crestron or AMX, we do have apps that have been put up into the stores about 5 months ago. So in the Crestron App Store or in AMX's in Concert, you can go and find the Xilica app, and that's going to get you, a really great start on controlling our DSP, right? And so you have that capability today. We also have, gone through partnership agreements and also interoperability testing with Intel Unite, which is, a product used a lot for BYOEM or BYOD collaboration, wireless presenting, things like that. And then a Barco ClickShare, right? And Barco ClickShare, as far as plugging in one single, connection for doing BYOEM, we're starting to see them used. We've always seen them used quite a bit, but even in the new conferencing environments, having that wireless way to connect. And so we do have that compatibility and a module for that. So we do have that capability from a control perspective, but also too, be aware that the DSP, because this is somewhat new over the last year and a half, the DSP, the Solaro DSP has capability to have control built in, right? And also too, the way we handle it with our touch panels and our app. And I'll talk a little bit about this, but it gets into the whole reducing black box thing. And so the way the software works. So if you want to control our DSP, let's say from either our app or our touch panels, it definitely has native controls in there. It's really easy to configure and all of that. If you wanted to control a third-party device, there's ways you can do that now on our DSP and our software. So you go into Xilica Designer, and you can either do that over TCP/IP or UDP command strings. You can put those in for button presses, or you can actually now do it over Lua. And so you can develop a Lua script. We do have some drivers created for some of the popular mic table, or the new beamforming mics. We do have some drivers already in there for that, because we see that heavily used in the corporate space, and now even starting to see that in education. But if you wanted to create your own Lua device driver from scratch, you could do that using Lua scripting. So that's all built into the platform. But here's what's really interesting is that once you do that in Designer and you configure a control UI and you're controlling a third-party device, the control actually gets embedded. You transfer the control application. Once you configure it, it gets transferred to the user interface, whether it's our app or our touch panel. And if you want to control a third-party device, the control does not come from our DSP. The control literally comes from the device itself. So you literally can have a boxless control system if you want to, right? So there's no black box in the middle sending out control commands, talking to your user interface. The user interface is literally talking to the third-party device itself, right? Which is really interesting and different. And so I wanted to kind of bring that to your attention. Now, is it a sophisticated control system that's going to, control a Cisco codec or something like that? No, probably not. That's going to be more of the Crestron AMX. But when we look at the way things are evolving in the conference rooms and classrooms, again with this whole hybrid environment, we really have been seeing a big trend towards less and less things to control. So when you think about everything that's going on in the app itself, then whether it's Teams or Zoom or whatever, whiteboard, all that kind of stuff, you're not switching sources as much. You're not engaging and talking back and forth to codecs anymore. It's really just kind of turning displays on and off, turning projectors on and off, raising and lowering projector screens. And if your application revolves around something like that, our control system is more than adequate to do something like that without the cost of a third-party system. Although they work, Crestron AMX systems work great. If you don't need that kind of sophistication, you don't have to pay for that. Back to the whole, we really believe you should only pay for what you need kind of thing. So anyway, something to be aware of, as you look at our product line. So we do have some, products that are tailored around, if you want to utilize our control system and be able to engage with it, we have some touch panels. So we have our 5-inch touch panel, which is the X-Touch 50 PoE. 1280 by 720 resolution. It can be run in portrait or landscape mode. That's software configurable. There's no labels on the product that require you to buy a separate SKU, right? You buy one SKU and then you can do it either way. You can change it in the future if you want to. The 5-inch, the X-Touch 50 is mountable in a US or EU UK 1-gang back box, a standard back box. So it's a nice little solution when you just need some kind of interface to control transport controls and volume controls, things like that. The X-Touch 80 is our 8-inch version, and so that's a 1280 by 800 resolution, IPS, PoE powered. Again, the onboard control engine that we talked about. And then we do have a new product here. So some of you who might have used the X-Touch before had a mounting bracket or basically a tabletop stand where you kind of saw the back of the product, right? And so you saw the wire coming in and stuff like that. So we have a new product coming to market, should be shipping in May, which is a nice tabletop stand that you can totally hide the cable if it routes down through the table or lectern underneath, or you can route it out the back. But it's just a nice, more elegant way to display the touch panel in a tabletop from a tabletop perspective. So, and the X-Touch 80, if you want to mount it on the wall, it's compatible with the US and EU, UK, actually US 2-gang back boxes. So with an included mounting bracket. And then finally, Lucia, which is our new wall controller. So really nice, beautiful design. It's PoE powered, single gang, US or EU, UK. If you're using the US version, it's very similar to the Bluetooth device in that you can use whatever color US Decora wall plate you want to. It's got a retractable rotary encoder. So you have really nice, sleek look when you're not using it. When you are using it, you push the button, the encoder, it comes out. You can use that for source selection, capacitive touch for actually select. So you'll use the encoder for indexing through your menu, and you have capacitive touch on the screen itself that you can use for selection. The EU version comes with a really elegant but robust aluminum wall plate. And so really nice solution here. You can do up to 32 control parameters, all configured in our Xilica Designer software. So really, really nice. If you don't need the sophistication or the expense of a touch panel, this is a really nice little elegant solution. And then finally, the app. So if you want to use something else that's not our touch panel or our wall controller, we have an app. And the X-Touch app is totally cross-platform. So you can use, we have X-Touch apps for Windows, we have it for Mac OS, iOS, and Android. So you can use any type of tablet, any type of phone, any type of computer you want. And here's the other cool thing as compared to some of the control manufacturers is this app is totally complimentary, totally free. So actually, and Mark and I were just talking about this a little bit earlier, if you want to have like a free control system, you can actually use Xilica Designer and the app. And, if you're just controlling a third-party device, it's totally complimentary, right? We would prefer that you buy the DSP and things like that too, but actually, so it's actually, there's no cost to that. And so this is really beneficial, in a classroom type of environment where you already have a room PC. Sometimes you'll have a touch monitor up there for your preview monitor, and the lecterns, you don't have a lot of room up there for another touch panel because you got to keep room for guest laptops and stuff like that. And so having the ability just to open it up on the screen, and whether you're using your mouse to drive the room or just touch on the monitor, you have that ability. Again, complementary. So you just simply design the UI in our designer software and put it out there. And again, Mac or laptop. Or if you want to use an iPad, even the other applications are for technician iPads and things like that, right? You have the ability to do that. So really lots of flexibility there. Before we jump into a few of the applications, is any other questions, Kyle, that we want to touch on now, or wait to the end?
Yeah, Sergey asked a pretty good question here, and I think you covered it on slide 14. Will you be able to use a DSP with the USB I/O card and the Geo expansion USB module at the same time?
Absolutely, man. I got to thank Sergio for teeing up this next thing we're going to show here perfectly. We're going to show an education solution first, but the corporate solution does exactly that.
And just so we understand as well, the Geo USB is a 2x2 USB channel, correct?
2x2 USB channels, correct.
And that would be the amount of Dante channels it utilizes over the network.
Well, it's 2x2 USB. It's still a 4x4 Dante, but yeah, it's only going to be using 2x2 because that's all the USB that you've got coming in and out.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks for the clarification.
You bet. Good question. All right, we're going to jump into a few of the applications here. So first and foremost, again, Xilica Designer is our configuration software. What I'm going to do is just introduce a few of the application diagrams, and I'm going to hand off to Mark. And instead of showing you more slides, he's just going to drive the software so you guys can see how it works. So he's going to actually go through a couple of templates that we're going to be bringing out that really simplify. If you're new to Xilica, it'll get you in there, get going. And he's going to show you some of that. So we're going to hit a classroom solution. And again, this is just an example of a hybrid classroom, small classroom, doing everything from that little bitty QR1, right? So if it's a super small lectern or you don't have a lot of room, you can throw that in there. With the cards, you have the ability to bring in analog mics if you want. We do have it, as a Dante amp, but you can go directly audio out into another amp. A lectern mic, a wireless mic, but we're also doing projector control and projector screen control, and that's using the X-Touch 80 or using an app on your room PC. So we'll go through that application, and then also the conference room. And back to Sergio's question, here's an excellent example. Using the QR1 behind the display, talking directly to the UC appliance, but then a Geo USB under the table, and then you can actually select which one actually takes over the room based on what's going on. So, and we do have the capability over HID to determine if Microsoft Teams is in a call and from where it's coming from. So we can actually use that, make that an automatic thing. So with that, I will hand over to Mark, and he'll run through some applications.
All right, thank you very much, Sean. So let's let me share my screen here, and we'll sort of start to map some of these things that Sean's been describing into the actual software, so you can get a feel for the environment. This is an open architecture programming environment for those of you that have used other platforms like QSys or Symmetrix or BiAmp. This will be very similar. We're looking here at a template we're working on for a medium-sized conference room. And just to kind of give you a quick tour of this environment, Here in the middle is our QR1, and you can resize these and really customize the schematic in any way, shape, or form. This particular template is using a Sennheiser TCC2. As Sean alluded to, here's our Geo USB device, our Geo Bluetooth device. Everything goes into a central PoE switch. We're also integrating with a PJ-Link projector. We're using a Dante amplifier. Again, the QR1 is a 4x4 Dante, and then going out to 4 speakers. So we've got a combination of Xilica products on screen, and we've got a combination of third-party products or generic integration to a third-party projector via PJ-Link. One thing that's really nice about the way we do control programming is the drag and drop aspect of it. So down here, I've got an X-Touch panel, and anything we bring onto this panel can be readily purposed towards whatever device you have at hand, whether it's our app for a mobile device, the app for Mac or PC, or for our physical X-Touch hardware. I can then start to come into these modules. Here's our TCC2 module, and I can just start to grab various elements from that module, bring them on screen to this X-Touch. Same thing with the PJ-Link projector app here. I can come in and just select whatever parameters I'd like to expose for this particular control panel. Drag and drop. Obviously, you'll arrange these and make them make sense for the end user. But just as a quick example of how easy it is to create a control system, and as Sean described earlier, you really don't even need to have a DSP here present. All that control programming goes straight to the app or straight to the hardware. Over here on the left is the component library. So here is where you would bring in additional QR1s. You can select from templates to get you started if you're not super familiar with Xilica or the open architecture environment. And in addition to our products are all these third-party products, from Audio-Technica to Kramer to Sennheiser to Shure. We've got a new MXA 910 module in here. So these are all drag and drop. And again, once you've got that module on screen, you can start to bring those elements into your control system as well. Let's hop over to another example here. This is for education. And similar design, it centers around a QR1. Everything goes into a central PoE switch. We're also integrating to a PJ-Link projector. Here's our X-Touch 80 hardware. We're also using a Dante amp. We're using a logic out to control the up and down for a screen. And then over here on the front end are our microphones for this lecture hall. So we've got, I should say inputs. We've got a room PC, a guest laptop input, 2 microphones for the instructor, and then 4 microphones for the student area. When you click on an object, you get its properties over here on the right. So whatever the object happens to be, you can see that the properties adjust based on what you've got in focus. So with the QR1 in focus, I can come over here and change the card configuration. Again, a modular device, so you build it based on the I/O at hand and the requirements at hand. I'm going to hop inside this QR1 so you can see a quick tour of the programming. Again, this is a template we're working on. So as you're looking at a new system, you can come in to our software and just select the hybrid classroom template number 1, for example. Inputs on the left, outputs on the right. These modules on the far left and right represent the cards. So based on how you've got the frame configured with the cards, you'll see different options here. In this particular one, we're using 3 analog cards. So that's providing 6 channels of analog I/O for our instructor and student microphones. USB card, that's a 2x2, so there's an input and an output component to that. And then we have 2 basic signal paths. We've got the signal path for our room mics. On the front end, we're using acoustic echo cancellation. Then we're just doing a little bit of corrective EQ with a high pass filter, a parametric, and a high shelf before going into a gain sharing auto mixer. Beamforming microphones are great. They are expensive, and let's not forget about just good old-fashioned microphones with an auto mixer. They do have very similar functionality at a fraction of the cost. That's what we're using in this one. And then down below, the signal path is for the far end. So this is our input from the UC client, be it Teams or Zoom or what have you. We're doing a little bit of loudspeaker management and a little bit of filtering before sending that to be locally reinforced. We're also grabbing that output of that far end signal and sending it to the reference input for our AEC modules. So I won't go into too much more detail than that. Again, when you click on an object, just as we did on the outside project view, you can come in and modify the properties of a given module to adjust its I/O or whatever the various attributes happen to be of that module. I'm going to show you next what's called the network view. And this is a really handy place to start with the software because it shows you what's live and online in your system. So here in my studio, I have a QR1 online and an FR1 online. So within this view, you can see various attributes like the firmware version, the IP address, the way that the network is set up, whether it's a static or DHCP. We can update firmware from here and just basically give you visibility on the various hardware attributes. And you will also discover third-party devices in here. The software uses UDP broadcast, so it sends those packets out, and even across subnets, it'll bring in devices that are on the network, so you can get really a good top-down version or view, I should say, of everything that's in the network. I'm going to switch over to Dante view really quick here. I don't have anything live in the system, so it's not populating. I should have plugged a couple Dante cables in beforehand, but this is basically a scaled back version of the Dante controller software. So if you're familiar with that, that's where you set up your routing between Dante devices. And to make it quick and easy, we have a scaled back version so you can get visibility on that Dante network directly from our software. You probably won't remember everything, but I just want to give you sort of an overview of the basic capabilities and the environment of the software. One last thing I'll mention is that once you've got all your programming in hand, you can then export this schematic to an AutoCAD formatted file or to a JPEG. You also get a bill of materials. So as you're designing the system and you're populating the design with our products and with third-party products, once you've got all that design figured out, you can come in here and export your design drawings. So you can put that in the binder. You can give a bill of materials to your purchasing agent and make the next step in that process quick and easy. I know we're coming up on the top of the hour here. We want to leave a little time for Q&A. So let me turn it back over to Sean and Kyle at this point.
Awesome. Appreciate the deep dive there, Mark. We did have a question come in regarding, and you touched on it, regarding beamforming microphones. So Raphael is curious about, is it possible for the DSP to grab the speaking participant location from a TCC2 microphone and use them to control a PTZ camera? So it sounds like we're basically programming in some logic in there. A microphone goes live, we recall PTZ camera preset 1 or 4 or 5.
It is, and if I may share my screen real quickly here, again, because this is a pretty cool feature. Let me come inside this TCC2 module once again. I can grab the vertical angle and this horizontal angle, and I'm going to go to my QR1 and hit this button that says Project Controller. And this is actually a quite sophisticated control engine. If you look at the component library on the left, you have a whole host of logic, numeric, and binary types of modules where you can build pretty sophisticated control signal paths that are all object-oriented. I can come in here to my TCC2 module, grab these angle parameters, and bring those on screen one at a time here. And from this now, I can effectively use that parameter to enact some sort of logical result within the software. So I could bring in a camera. We have generic modules for Visca, Pelco, what have you. And then I could grab its PTZ controls here, bring that on screen alongside those vertical and horizontal angle controls from the beamforming microphone, and connect these together so that they can share logical information, and from that effectively communicate and adjust accordingly. So when it senses a given source, the camera can move accordingly. So there's a lot of capability here within this project controller environment. In fact, you can grab elements from the audio programming as well and bring those on screen. So if you've got a volume control or something in the audio programming, you can bring that in, and it abstractifies it, if you will, into this logical representation of that parameter. And then from that, you can build these control signal paths and do some pretty sophisticated things.
Fantastic. No, appreciate you answering that, Mark. Looks like we're at the top of the hour here. It doesn't appear to have any other questions coming in. However, as mentioned, we are actually going to be making this recording available to everyone in the coming days. And if we have any additional questions or want to schedule a demo, we can reach out to our regional representation. Daniel below covers the East Coast. Eric Oliveras covers Ontario, and I am covering Manitoba over to the West Coast. But other than that, again, thanks everybody for jumping in on today's call. I hope we showed you something that was new, exciting, and will actually be a great application going forward for our hybrid environment.
Well, thank you, everyone. So thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mark. And we'll see you guys soon, I guess.
Definitely. Thanks a lot,
Very
gentlemen.
good. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one.
Appreciate y'all's time.